Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Off-Grid Vision. I'm trying to sound pretty cheery, but in all reality I've just gone through a flu, which was a sort of epidemic here in northern Italy. So the muscles are feeling pretty tense and my throat is a bit gone, etc, etc. But I'm still excited about this podcast today, because it's with a dear friend of mine. But before I introduce him and what we talk about, I wanted to mention what's going on in May, which is now being confirmed. We're up and running. We're going to run a course in Delft in South Africa, which is a town near Cape Town. And the idea is to teach as much as possible about natural building. Even stuff we don't actually build, we're going to be teaching about it. So we're going to be doing theoretical lessons and lots of practical stuff for a month, 4-week period. There's information about that on offgrid.vision, but we'll cover all the Earthship principles, rammed earth building, and a lot more. It's going to be with Peter McIntosh, who I've interviewed on this podcast, and Matt Peanuts, who I've also interviewed on this podcast, and Harrison Gardner, who's also been on the podcast. So the podcast has actually brought people together to do this course, which is cool. So something great is coming out of these conversations. At least it feels like that to me. Also, thank you to people who have bought some shirts, because those are helping to pay for the hosting costs. They're not quite paying for the hosting costs, but they certainly do help, and it always feels great to get them. So if you do buy a shirt, please feel free to take a photo of yourself in some strange location or building or doing something off-griddy, if you like, and we'll put them up on Facebook. Now for today's guest. My brain is just fried today. Yeah, today's guest is Gregoire Durrens, who's a dear friend of mine. I first met him in Taos, and he's since gone on to do loads of different builds and different projects with and without Earthship, and this conversation is focused on his work away from Earthship. So he's been very involved in the Fablab movement, which is phenomenal. It's off-grid manufacturing, essentially. And he talks a lot about that and his idea of a Fabship, which would be combining the Earthship worlds with the Fabship worlds, or the Fablab worlds, rather. It's pretty cool. The conversation, as you'll find, was the second attempt, because we recorded for about 6 minutes before I realized that my mic wasn't properly plugged in. But we were actually in an onsen in Japan, so you can hear a lot of background noise and a little bit of flute music, and we're both sitting there pretty much naked, to be honest, having a talk. And nothing distracted us. We got the job done. It was a fun one, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, so this is take 2 with the microphone plugged in, which is good. But we're warmed up. So, Greg, it's great to get this opportunity to ask you stuff about your life and what you do. But first, we're in a really interesting place. We're specifically in an onsen.
On onsen in Japanese, which means hot springs.
Yeah.
And that's because we had a very, very rainy and cold and muddy day on the job site today, because we're building an Earthship now in Japan, which is also an academy. And here we are. We first thought about doing it on the job site, but pouring rain, cold, we just said, let's go to the onsen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a way of paying respect as well. Just a little shout out to Tim Ferriss's podcast, which I know we both listen to, but the fact we're in Japan and in a sauna-like environment, I think that's very up his street, building a sustainable house. And we're building an Earthship, and I think everyone knows what that is by now from previous episodes. But what I want to get into with you is more, well, first of all, asking what it is you do. So you mentioned systems before. So let's just go through that, because I think it's an interesting approach to what you do.
Yeah, I usually I usually say to people that I'm specialized in self-sufficient systems of living. So that includes house, buildings, but that also includes smaller scale systems, which are more technological, even though building a house is very technological, but I'm more talking about technology we know, such as, when there is electronics and when there is mechanical things. And so I specialize into systems that allow people to be free, basically, to rely on themselves or a community around systems that are decentralizing the means of power in the world.
Okay, I mean that's great. That's a great diving board we can jump off for sure. Systems. Let's talk about systems for a start. I know that you tend to think in a very specific way, in a very detail-oriented way, and I see that in what you do on site as well. I mean, you tend to have a system for. I mean, the one I noticed was cutting polyiso, for example. You'll set yourself up, you'll look at the best way to do something, invest a little bit of time, a little bit like Abraham Lincoln, who said, what was it? Give me 4 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend 3.5 hours sharpening the axe. It seems like you're sharpening the axe on certain levels.
That's a great metaphor. I think Earthship has been a great teaching because I'm an engineer, right? That's what I studied. I worked as a system engineer before. And so I learned to be working in a world that's super controlled. Like everything has measurement, everything, it's mostly designed on the computer and all of this. So I'm coming from this world. And jumping, so it's talking about 10 years ago now, jumping to a world of construction, which is real, it's not on the computer, then you have to deal with randomness of things. And working with construction and Earthship taught me to shift from being too detail-oriented, being too specific about things and losing a lot of time, to a place where I actually embrace the fact that this can go faster, this accuracy doesn't matter. So it's all about knowing at which level of accuracy you're working.
Right.
And I find that more and more I'm finding a balance between keeping the spirit of doing things in a detail-oriented way and speeding things up because it doesn't matter. And this balance expresses itself by taking the time to think about which level of accuracy we need to work in and setting up systems around the work we need to do to make it easier later. So it's worth for me taking the time, maybe 3 hours to set up a system to make our life easier and to make the work faster.
For 3 weeks.
Later.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, on this build, there was this curved can wall. So we're building with recycled material. I mean, we repurpose material such as cans, and we are building this wall that's curved. And, it took maybe a day to set up a system that would easily give us the center of this curvature so that we can just build and not worry about being leaning outward or inward.
Yeah. So when you teach, because that's something you're beginning to do more, I get the impression. When you teach, do you have an approach to that as well? Do you think carefully about levels of detail, warming people up to receive what you're going to tell them? How do you approach teaching in general? Any examples?
I think I'm lucky in a way that I was not such a quick learner, and the reason why I'm saying this is like everything that has a downside can have an upside as well. And the downside of the upside of being a slow learner is that you really not only you understand the thing in the end that you're learning, but you understand the path to get it. you really understand the many steps in your mind that there is between not understanding the subject and understanding it. So it becomes much easier as a teacher to bring people along that path.
That's interesting to me though, because if I look around and the number of times I hear someone on site saying, okay, that's a little bit complicated, let's get Greg on or something, or let's check with Greg, or, you know. So you don't strike me as someone who learns slowly, but maybe it's because you're passionate and you spend a lot of time engaged in learning. I mean, you must, or is that something that happened before? I don't know, YouTubing for ages, or really scouting out what information's there? And
there's a difference between experience and learning. And I'm 36, so there's stuff that I've done many times. There's stuff that I had to figure out many times. So I guess the more experience you have, the quicker you can do bridges between the things and figure things out. But I genuinely think that I'm not a very fast learner, to be honest. And things that I'm teaching now, it took me a while to understand them. So I really spent the time to decompose the learning process into many steps. So I think now my approach to teaching is to bring people along those many steps. For example, in the electricity class, I like to really make people understand what is the flow of electron, how does it work when there is a branch, that electrical pressure stays the same, but the flow splits and recombines after when you have a circuit. And to do that, I make people stand up in the classroom, make a big circle, and everybody is a free electron in the middle. And we just touch shoulders with our hands, and we just start moving, just to make people understand that it's not because you move slow that at the other end of the line there's no movement. It gives them a better understanding of what's really happening at the atomic level. And to come back to what we were saying just before, I really had to picture that in my mind to be able to understand electricity. And many other people of many classmates when I was learning engineering before, they had figured that out very fast somehow. And so I don't know if it's a theoretical knowledge that they got very fast, but I really have the need to bring things to a tangible level, and that takes time.
A visceral experience,
and that takes time.
Yeah, it does take time to
helps
enter.
To teach, and that helps.
Well, when it enters in that way, I think it's slower to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It sticks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, you incorporate it in your skin somehow.
Yeah.
You when you come to this tangible conclusion about a subject, you never forget it.
So, speaking of forgetting, what do you think you won't forget about these last 3.5 weeks on any level?
This build has been great. I really enjoyed it. I'm not comparing it to any other build, but I can just say that I really enjoyed it. It was staged super well by our foreman, who I believe did a podcast with you.
Number one podcast.
The number one
Harrison.
podcast.
Yep.
And it was very, the job site was very tiny, so challenging to organize.
It's tight.
And you were the site manager actually, so you did a very good job as well. So very good staging, very good managing of the job site. That made that building, that construction go smoothly. And also the fact that it's Japan.
Yeah. Well, so what is it that, in 4 years' time, someone will say Japan build 2018.
Yeah.
What do you imagine being the things that pop into mind?
Right. Well, probably doing a podcast in Onsen.
That'll be one of them. That's great. Yeah.
The class that I taught, It's hard to tell what I'm going to remember. We're talking about my mind in the future. Sometimes I can't even figure out my mind in the present. So it's a tough question.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I can talk about what I really like now, and I really liked during those past weeks. So that's probably what I'm going to remember, which is the Japanese students. I mean, all of the students really, but of course, memories are fading away. So it's not gonna be specific person, but more like feelings about groups of people. And the group of Japanese students is amazing. They're like so willing. They're very detail oriented.
Yeah.
They don't mind taking the time to do things nicely, and they're very polite. They're very smiley. They're very attentive in class, and so great group of people for sure. The tools also, the Japanese tools. Going to the hardware store is an experience here because you've got so many trowels and chalk lines with everything that's figured out to make your life easier, kind of like the toilets here. I mean, they push the conveniency of things to a next limit. I'm going to remember, and also I'm going to remember the colors because it's fall now, and we have so many trees around. We've
watched them turn on the mountain. We've seen just green turn into red and orange and beautiful. Speaking about the sort of the Japanese element to this build, the students are super keen, super enthusiastic. Like everyone is normally keen. We're used to that, but this is it's different. There's also I think we mentioned this before we were recording, a level of consideration.
Yeah.
And everything is considered, from the tools, how to do something, who's around, what it means for the other. To me, it reminds me a little bit of English culture in the sort of the sorry aspect, that people will say, they're always ready to say sorry and to put themselves in a position that makes things go better for everyone. Mm-hmm. And that's something I really appreciate. I mean, my example is on the road. I mean, if someone's going slow, they pull over for you, and they if you do it for them, they thank you with the emergency lights.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of consideration.
Yeah, and I haven't traveled. That's my first time in Japan, and I haven't traveled yet in Japan. I'm about to spend 3 more weeks in Japan later. So I cannot say that I've experienced the Japanese culture so much because we've been working so much on the build. But from what I've heard, it's totally matching this the social aspect of Japanese culture of being very polite and considerate.
Well, keeping the place tidy as well. I think it's actually good for us as a company to be meeting this sort of level of organization. I think it's given us something. I really do.
It's probably giving us a benchmark.
Yeah, I think
a threshold just to keep in mind. Yeah.
Oh, there's always another benchmark. Listen, I think we should have a little break and warm up a little bit. And come back. Before we talked about where we are, what we're doing, I'd like to talk about why we're here. We've both had dreams that have meant that we're here in this one place, in this one time. When did your dreams start? When do you think you were like, I want to work with those guys, I want to do that? Or was it before that? What is your dream?
Yeah. So I did my studies. I like them. I was lucky to like them. And then I worked as an engineer. And then my awareness grew. And I realized that my action was not matching my philosophy in my work.
How long had that philosophy been there? What was that philosophy?
I think it's like humidity in the air before clouds form. So it's there, but it's invisible, but it's there. And it takes just to drop temperature a little bit so that suddenly all this humidity shows. And I think around 25, my education, my family, my friends, my very deep personality were already there, floating in my mind atmosphere. And then suddenly there was this temperature drop that made those clouds appear. And those clouds are ideas and clarity. Like I could see in the sky of my mind, to continue the metaphor, what I was really doing and what was the impact of what I'm doing, which I don't agree. I didn't agree with. So I was working, and suddenly this awareness grew somehow through books that I was reading at that time, and like artists, which says how important art is, and I realized that the bigger picture in which I am, that I was a stain in the bigger picture. From in my philosophy, I was a stain in this bigger picture. I didn't like what I was in this painting, so I quit, and I started to try to change color. I started to try to work on myself and to discover what life is about, really.
So when was this? I mean, I know it's probably over a long period of time, but when did you quit?
It's 10 years ago, I think. Yeah, 10 years ago. And then to answer your question, very quickly I was able to, those clouds that I was talking about, formulated a dream, which is, no, I gotta be ecological. I gotta respect human beings. I gotta respect any human beings. My action need to respect the human beings on the other side of the planet, I gotta respect nature. I gotta be in harmony with all of this.
Future human beings.
Yes, and also human beings to come, of course. Being willing to do this implies reorganizing your whole life, basically. I was working as a system engineer for a company designing systems for raiders, and I found out at some point that I was actually contributing to sell systems to unmanned boats that on which there was machine guns, like that would stand for war. I mean, I was like, I don't want to spend my time doing this. I don't want to make money out of this. It's bullshit. And so I quickly went on a journey to explore life. For me, it was a second rebirth, honestly. And very quickly, that forged a dream, which was to build my house, be simple, grow my food with people around me, and being self-sufficient, not feeling any pressure from a political system or an economical system. Don't get me wrong, I still think that politics is very important. It's a very important subject, and I'm very interested in that. But if a political system fails, I want to know that me and also other people can have a restart very easily. So I don't want to be too dependent on a global system, economical system that's driven by oil and all of this. So that's what led me to permaculture. So at some point I found myself, back at my grandmother's place. It's a place that I really love, and I have a very strong relationship with my grandmother. My grandfather and my grandmother were both artists, and so
Is she still alive?
She's still alive, yeah.
And was she the wife of your grandfather you were talking about in the car?
Yeah, she's so my grandfather was
She was laughing with you then?
Oh yeah, everybody was laughing.
Okay, beautiful.
And my grandfather was an engraver, and she's a writer and a painter.
Oh wow!
And they left Paris, and they went in the countryside, and they built a house on their own, and they're surrounded by art. So I'm coming from that background. I was coming back to art, basically. Art saved me, extracted me from this wrong path somehow, and also I've always been in touch with this way, thanks to my family, and I wanted to explore that direction as well. And very quickly, obviously, I've got no special talents, and I just enjoy doing it. But you gotta make money somehow, So I found myself there, spending a full year, painting and playing drum. I've been playing drum for a long time, but I stopped for a long time also for my studies and everything. So I went back to that, and obviously I enjoyed it a lot. At some point, it's like I gotta work somehow. I gotta make money, and I know it's not and it's not that it's a goal to make money, but I gotta pay for my food, and very quickly I realized that, oh my God, I need to set up an environment in which I don't need to rely so much on money. I need to, this is what I want to do. I want to create my house. I want to build my house. I want to learn how to build a house. I want to learn how to grow my plants so that I don't have to rely so much on money to be, it's very obvious what I'm saying, but I'm genuinely describing what went through my mind when I was very young. And it's funny because this step, this decision of building my house and growing my own vegetables to be free, so that in the end I can go back and do art, actually has been my project for like more than 10 years now. And luckily I very enjoy it. So actually building self-sufficient houses and designing and helping spreading around ways of building your own systems, electronics, mechanical systems for self-sufficiency is actually, I discovered it's also a passion of mine. So it's been 10 years now and I still haven't put the first brick of my house, So it's, I thought it was just a step required so that I could get to my dream. But in the end, this step is pleasure, is meaningful. So it seems that it's extending a lot.
Very similar dreams that many of us have, isn't it? Really, to be able to live in peace and to be creative and to live well, whatever that means for. Let's dive into a totally different component. The main reason, or the initial reason, that we started to talk about doing a podcast was Fablabs.
Right.
So let's dive into that. You explained to me a little bit about what they are in a car ride, but it really ties into everything we've been speaking about to now. So I think a lot of people out there won't have heard, a lot of people will have heard and a lot of people won't have heard what a Fablab is. Give us the short version and the long version, and
I'm going to start by explaining the need of a Fablab to introduce what it is really. So when we talk about being self-sufficient, of course there is the house, there is the garden, and today when we think about this transition movement, there is a whole bunch of people that are going online and that are checking if they can get involved in some volunteering work or if they can even get a job doing this. And myself, when I for the first time when I decided that I wanted to try constructions, ecological construction, what did I do? I just Googled it. I went online and I found a website where it was a blog actually of an eco village that were saying, hey, we're looking for volunteers. And so my point here is that most of the people that I met through my life that got involved in a transition got the information about the possibility of this transition thanks to technology. So what I'm saying here is that we live in a time where there is internet, and internet is a major parameter in making this transition happen, because most of the people that I talk to, they say, "Oh, I saw online that you were doing something." So that proves in a way that, of course, there is a lot of technology that is useless, but there is this global nervous system that brings up the level of awareness all over the world.
Perspective, consciousness,
yes.
Just knowledge, absolutely.
It's a global nervous system, and people rely on that to make the shift to a more sustainable world. So So there is a need to keep what's worth in the technological world. There is also a need to decentralize it. And now we just talked about internet, but it's big companies that are making it run. What if we could have a network that's completely distributed? We're talking about off-grid buildings, but internet is the grid as well. So how do you create a grid where you are a node, but you are an active node? You don't only receive information, but you can also participate in this decentralized network. So that's one aspect that introduced the idea of Fablab. The second aspect is more tangible and concrete. So I just said earlier that I went to an eco-village to start building straw bale houses, 10 straw bale houses for 10 families. They were always in need of a workshop. They were always in need of a place where they could custom make things or repair tools and stuff like that. And when I was working as an engineer, I came across a movement that's called the Fablab movement, which stands for Fabrication Laboratories. And this movement is really following the principles of permaculture in the technological domain. It's open to the public most of the time. It's relying on open source data, so people share things, they share their ideas, and when you do something, somebody else can build on top of that. And so I saw before I was happy to meet this movement when I was an engineer, because it was a movement that was talking about technology, which I had knowledge about, but then this movement has a complete different philosophy from my work, which was socially better in my point of view. It was sharing. It was about making things that are good for people. So then I really wanted to blend the two together. And now I'm going to describe what a Fablab is exactly. But I saw that there is a need of keeping what's worth in technology, what's worth keeping. And also I saw that there is a concrete need in places that are willing to to implement self-sufficiency. There's a need of a workshop that can invent, prototype, repair objects and systems and tools. And a Fablab is this workshop. It's a connected workshop. It's a workshop somewhere that is part of a global network of workshops all over the world that share the same tools and the same processes. And the most important thing that they share is that they share an inventory. They share an inventory that lists all the things that you need to make almost anything. That's coming from the MIT. So there is the director of the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT that created a class there that was called How to Make Almost, in brackets, almost. How to make almost anything. So obviously this class went viral, and they had a lab there. They had a lab that they called Fabrication Laboratory, which is Fablab. And in that lab, they had a set of machines, 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC mill, so that they could prototype and do almost anything. It's a little factory. And many other universities started to make similar labs, Fab Labs, and then it just took off. All over the world, people started to create Fab Labs, but out of nothing almost. But there was just the spirit, which shows how important the philosophy behind it is important. So, to answer your question, Fab Lab is a place to invent, prototype. It's a workshop, but it's part of a bigger network where people can share, download objects, make them right away. And I think in the context of self-sufficiency, it's a catalyst, because of course today in the Fablab network there is a lot of things that are that are not aligned with self-sufficiency. But at least it empowers people to do things themselves. It reconnects them with the fact of doing things themselves. And we're not talking about houses. Some of them are talking about houses. But I believe the power of this network, Fablab network, lies in prototyping, open sourcing blueprints of systems of self-sufficiency, such as inverters, charge controllers, and all of this.
So we're talking about, or we've talked about decentralizing housing and taking us off the grid. This is like a decentralized network, which, okay, maybe a grid or whatever, who gives a shit. We've decided to change the swearing policy on the podcast. But we've got cryptocurrencies decentralizing money. I mean, there's a real pattern here, isn't there? It's almost like the tide of information has risen to the point where people are saying, I need to be free and well. And an integral part of that is everything is manufactured. And manufacturing is one of the three pillars of power. You've got finance, manufacturing, and military, which is a combination of the two. But if you took away the need for these big manufacturers and just said, I need a pump, I need this piece, download the ingredients and cook up a pump. It sounds really exciting.
It pushes further the potential of the internet, basically. What we want to, and it has a high potential of being sustainable as well, because in the network we often talk about the PITO, P-I-T-O, PITO model, and
what is that?
And as opposed as the Dido model. So the PITO model is the model that we have today, which is product in, trash out. And it really is what's happening nowadays. Yeah. And we need to shift from that to data in, data out. So the idea is that something is made somewhere that fulfills need, that makes sense. You just transfer the data to make it locally. So the idea is all about bringing the manufacturing back to local workshops.
Do you know that thing about the three revolutions, the three industrial revolutions? Yeah.
Of course.
So just for anyone who doesn't, we're talking about three main industrial revolutions, and we're looking at the technology or communication that powered them, the fuel that powered them, and the
the labor?
Yeah, the work, or the transport. So the first one was powered by steam. The communication was telegraph and possibly radio, and then the transport was locomotion and trains. Second was oil. Power was electricity, oil. Communication was television, certainly radio, obviously, and the transport was the automobile, the car. And the third is going to be renewable energy as the power. We're talking about self-driving cars and only when necessary transportation, and communication is this two-way internet and the Internet of Things, etc., etc. Maybe you can fill in on that. If you want, and place what this is within it.
Yeah, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution here. I mean, when you look at what happened to personal computer, I mean, like 5 decades ago, computers were just in like massive rooms somewhere to do like very simple calculations compared to today, and suddenly those computers happen to be on the desk of many people. That's why we call them PC, personal computers. And then we had, for example, so that those computers were able to do things in terms of communication, and they're allowed to create a network, such as the internet, and they were able to crunch out a bunch of data in the computer, so it was very virtual. But then, let's take the example of the printer. The printer is actually a computer numerical controlled machine. It takes something you design in the virtual world and transforms it into reality. So many people have this setup already. I mean, I know there's a big part of the world that doesn't have that yet. Fablabs are working on that, actually. A lot of people have a computer and a printer, right? So we talk about the fourth industrial revolution because we are about to have those machines, such as printers, at the community level. It's no longer a big factory with patents that can only produce mass production of like objects. It's mass customization. It's okay, I have a need here in this community, and there is all of those people that already thought about that and that already designed something. I'm just going to download that because it's open source. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to share that with the world. So I give back, and I'm going to make it local with machines that are basically printers. So it's a revolution in terms of manufacturing because you bring back at a very local, at a personal level almost, computer to communicate and download the data, and then the machine, the printer, that will transfer that data into the tangible world. So we used to say we need to shift from a world where things are transported all over the world to a world where only bits are moving. Atoms, they need to stay here.
Yeah, information just flowing and where it's needed, and not being transported on massive oil tankers the whole time from one end to the other. Yeah. Where can people learn more about this and really get involved if they want to?
Well, they can look information on the Fab Foundation website. They can also check out the FabAcademy website because there is an academy that teaches people how to use those machines. And our project, me and my colleague, is the Fabship. So it's a blend between Earthship and Fablab. So really what it is about is trying to focus the power of Fablabs in terms of decentralizing and bringing back manufacturing to a local level. It's a project that focuses this power on self-sufficiency, on producing the objects and the systems that we need to be free.
Where do you want to put that? Where is that going to be?
Well, the first prototype is going to be pretty much next to the headquarters of Earthship in Taos, New Mexico, in the States. Why? Because there is all the expertise of grid buildings there already. Yeah. Not only that, but also because there is the community already.
There's an inflow of people ready to absorb this kind of...
You don't really want to have a Fab Lab for yourself. It doesn't make sense. Sure.
So Fab Lab, very quickly, it's like 20 machines or 10 machines?
There's different sizes. You have the $1 million Fab Lab, which is able to do everything from bearings to from super accurate axes. And there is the Fab Labs that are $1,000 Fab Labs, which are just like 3D printing, and you're still gonna have to order parts, but you're gonna have raised the level of autonomy that you have locally for your community. So there is a whole range of different Fab Labs actually in the inventory, and you can have this you can check this inventory online. It's open source. You can go right now on the Fab Foundation website.
Yeah, we'll have links for that below.
And find about this inventory. It'll tell you what are the machines that you can have, and if you're planning to set up a $10,000 Fab Lab, you need those machines. And if you want to be able to run, for example, the FabAcademy, which is a distributed
learning
academic
network.
academic program. It takes 6 months. Coordinated by MIT. If you want to run the Fab Academy, then you need to have like 100,000 Fablab, $100,000 Fablab.
Listen, I think that's a great start. I mean, that's a really proactive place to go and figure this stuff out, and I hope people check it out. It sounds great. I feel like
our website is fabship.cc.
Okay, fabship.cc.
CC.
Okay, we'll put links.
It really is the Cocoa Islands. But we took that because it in the open source world, it means Creative Commons.
Yeah, okay, so where are the Cocoa Islands?
I think it's... I'm not sure.
I'm sure they're nice, though. They sound really nice.
Cocoa sounds nice for sure.
Cool. Well, yeah, Greg, thanks so much for the time. And as always, links below. Any comments or questions, don't hesitate. And yeah, see you next time.
All right.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Before you go, or rather immediately after you've gone, please go down to iTunes, leave a review, help us grow, get more guests, raise more money for projects. We have other projects coming up. You can find news about those on offgrid.vision, where you can also get access to other shows and some phenomenal t-shirts which go towards, well, the profit of which goes towards new projects. If you have any requests for someone to come on the show, do let me know via the site. Until next time, thanks for listening and see you soon.